Yeah. Hey guys. We are doing something fun, new and exciting today. I wanted to start a new series on my channel called Nerding Out with Apple. And this will essentially be a series where I yap about something that's been interesting me, whether that's like an art genre that I'm interested in, or my hyperfixation meal of the week, or some kind of random historical rabbit hole I fell into at 2 a.m. I think it's basically an opportunity to do something other than vlogs. And I really enjoy watching video essays, and I'm obviously a student myself, so I love learning new things. I just thought it could be cool to learn about new things together, but in a very kind of chill, accessible way. I think one thing that I struggle with at university is like how inaccessible a lot of the language feels, especially in something like art and art history, which seems like a very elitist subject. But art and everything is for everyone. Art and learning is for everyone. So yeah, I just thought we could nerd out together. Today, I thought that we could talk about some of my favorite paintings. I'm an art history student at the University of Cambridge, and originally I was gonna do something like talking about my favorite art movement, and I did film it, but it just felt very like a mini lecture, and that's definitely not the vibe I'm going for. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. Let me know if you have any questions or thoughts so we can talk about it in the comment section. Let's get into it. Okay, so I'm absolutely winging this with you guys. There's this amazing website called Google Arts and Culture. It's just so fun. It's got so many really, really crazy, good, high resolution images of paintings and artworks, which means you can zoom in really, really close, which is really cool because they have like a big collaboration with lots of galleries and stuff like that. I've been on it for many, many years, meaning I have a very long favorites folder. Oh yeah, 400 plus. Jesus. So I'm going to go down to the bottom, scroll through and see what paintings I've been enjoying throughout the years. Okay, what have we got? What have we got, guys? We got some Gauguin. I don't want to talk about Gauguin because Gauguin was a pedophile. We got The Birth of Venus, obviously. Okay, this is a good one. I, for the longest time, have always said, like, if someone asks what my favorite painting is, I always say this one. And I would say I don't actually have a favorite painting, but I say this one as an easy answer because I do love it so much. This is Carnation Lily Lily Rose by John Singer Sargent, painted around 1885. It is just the most, like, spectacular, calming, beautiful image I've ever seen. Probably one of the best I've ever seen. It's in Tate Britain. It's massive, 1.5 meters wide, 0.15 meters tall, half a meter tall. Guys, they've done it in millimeters and it's really confusing me. And I feel like this should be really basic. 1,537 millimeters wide by 174 millimeters high. If I'm 1.5, I don't know. I'm 5'9". Imagine a 5'9" person on my side. It's pretty big. You get the idea. It's a painting, oil on canvas. I'll read you the Google Arts description. Set in a garden in the Cotswold village of Broadway, where John Singer Sargent, the artist, stayed in the summer of 1885. The children are lighting Japanese lanterns with tapers. The child is Dolly on the left and Polly Barnard on the right. Sargent wanted to capture this exact level of light at dusk, so he painted the picture out of doors in the Impressionist manner, which we can talk about. The title comes from the refrain of a popular song, The Reef by Joseph Mazzinghi. So yeah, I think what's super cool about this painting is probably like the effect of the light and the fact that he painted this outdoors like multiple times to try and capture that exact moment is so clear here because it's like this subtle blue hue that you get when the sun's like has just gone under the horizon, and it's like this perfect contrast of colors where you've got the kind of opposing blue hues with the orange of the light and all the pinks coming out in this kind of like, they're quite soft pink, so it's not like too contrasting. Everything feels very cohesive. And then you got like the pinks and the blue hues on the white of their dresses as well. So they're kind of blending in, kind of mirroring the flowers that are around them. It's also just like very sweet, right? Like it's two little girls doing something so wholesome, like lighting a lantern. And I like the embrace of this kind of childlike femininity, beautiful billowing white fabrics, when the white's kind of symbolizing their innocence as well. Lilies above them also symbolize innocence in paintings. If I could live in a painting, I would live in this painting. In terms of like some kind of historical context, they were saying about the Impressionist way of painting outdoors. So the Impressionists, who probably would have seen a bunch of their paintings, you got artists like Monet and Cézanne. They started around like late 1800s, where they were basically really trying to capture light in a super realistic way. And sometimes that meant that their brushstrokes were like a lot more visible, right? Like you can see each individual brushstroke rather than it trying to look like a real thing. The kind of like tradition of the time was painting things in a very kind of idealized, realistic way, in the sense that brushstrokes were super smooth, everything looked very solid. It didn't look like a painting, it looked like the actual thing. I think I've over-explained that. The Impressionists were trying to do things that they thought were more realistic, in the sense that like they're like actually capturing the atmosphere of what they're painting, so that you'll have a lot of kind of landscapes where like they got big splodges of thick paint on white, but like that's capturing the brilliance of the sun hitting the water. You know, when like you're staring at the sea and the white is like dazzling you in the eyes, like that's the kind of effect that they're trying to capture, rather than something like a lot more realistic maybe, but doesn't quite capture the feeling of what you're seeing. So because of that, they were painting outdoors a lot to try and capture something in a more like personal way. So they really popularized that movement where painters started painting outside, which seems so normal now, but was very revolutionary at the time. So Singer Sargent, even though I don't think he's technically an impressionist, he's working at the same time as that movement is happening. And so him painting outdoors would also be part of this kind of like revolutionary movement in art that was happening. Yeah, I guess that's all I've got to say about that really. But one thing that's going to be interesting about this video is me fighting the urge to kind of over-intellectualize all of my decisions, like all of the paintings that I'm going to pick in this video, because sometimes I just like a painting because I think it's beautiful. And that's one of these paintings for me. Like, this is a very popular painting. I'm not unique in saying that I love this painting so much. It's very, very popular. I've seen many people wearing a tote bag with this painting on it. But there's a reason why it's so popular, because he's created this like universally appealing image. Everyone likes how it feels to look at colors that work well together. Everyone likes the beauty of a blossoming rose. Everyone can relate to the like childhood wonder that this painting is capturing. And I think sometimes just enjoying a painting because it makes you feel good is a good enough reason to say that you love this painting. Yeah, that's my number one. And I actually know which one I want to talk about next. Again, this is going to be a super non-basic answer. No, it's going to be a super basic answer. For the same reason I think it's okay to like a painting just because you think it's beautiful, I think sometimes it's also okay to like a painting just because you like the story of it, right? So this is called The Ambassadors. It's by Hans Holbein the Younger, 1533. It's in the National Gallery. Super mega famous painting. Again, like one of those kind of textbook paintings. I learned about it in A-levels. It was one of my like set works that we had to look at. The reason why I like this painting so much is because every time I go to the National Gallery and I'm like showing a friend around, this is such a good painting to talk to people about. It's got such a good story, and it's also like super visually interesting. And there's always that moment you go, and now look here. And they're like, what? That's crazy. And I'm like, I know. And it's cool to get excited about art together. So what are we actually looking at? These are two French ambassadors. The context is essentially this painting was commissioned by the guy in the super fuzzy coat. the one on the left, who kind of looks like Henry VIII, and we'll come on to that. They were tasked with going to England and trying to basically talk Henry VIII out of leaving the Catholic Church, because he wanted to cut them off because he wanted a divorce from his wife. He really had the hots for Anne Boleyn, and the Catholic Church said, no, you can't get a divorce. And he said, well, I'm gonna make my own church then. These guys came from France to say, please don't do that, stay in the church. It was too late, he'd already left the church. And so the idea is that this guy commissioned the painting to kind of make up for the fact that they couldn't convince him, to kind of give himself a pat on the back and go, well, I did the best I could and I'm still a godly man. It was commissioned to be in his house. Right, so I feel like it's him kind of like giving himself a hug. So what can we like analyze about this painting? First of all, I think what's cool is the like symbolism of all the objects on the table that you can see in the middle. We've got a 2-tiered table, and these guys are both leaning on the top level, right? First of all, there's this like Islamic rug on it, which was super expensive at the time and like quite rare, and definitely only the richest people could afford them or have them in their houses. They were never like put on the floor. They were always kind of on something, especially under things that were valuable. So here, it's already creating this like elevation of the objects around this table, right? They're going, these are important objects. And all of these objects are to do with more celestial things. So things that can like relate to the heavens and the stars. So you got a celestial globe, and then you've got a sundial, which like tracks the movement of the sun. You've got things to capture the movement of the stars. So they are kind of resting on this more divine realm. And then that contrast is made so much more clear because on the bottom shelf, it's this kind of earthly realm. So you've got a globe of earth. You've got things like a broken lute. So you've got a little lute there, but the string is broken. There's all these very subtle details that like the earth is now broken. There's that little red book you can see, and it's been left, it's a maths book, and it's been left open on the page of division. So it's talking about how the church is splitting into Catholic and Protestant, and therefore there's this like divide in the world right now. So when I was talking about him trying to like give himself a pat on the back, he's literally going, we're divine. Like, we're on the divine level. Right now, the earth's gone to shit, but we're not. We're up here. Like, yeah? And then the big, cool key thing, which kind of makes this painting so famous, is that it was commissioned to be put on his spiral staircase going up. You would have walked up the stairs, it would have been on the wall, and so you would have first seen it from a bottom angle. And if you follow your eye, you can see there's this weird like thing at the bottom. That's a skull, which you can probably make out. But if you are at that bottom angle, the angle of it makes the skull actually appear. So you're confronted with this weird kind of ghostly floating skull at the bottom of the painting. And if you trace your eye all the way up, you look at the dude, whose name is, I can't remember, I feel like it's Jean. Yeah, Jean de Dontville. You're looking at him, and then if you carry on that diagonal line up into the left corner, you have a little crucifix. If you can see that in the tiny corner hiding behind the curtain. And so the idea basically is, you look at death in the eye, then you look at Jean, and then you look at Christ. And essentially you're thinking, wow, even in death, Jean is with Christ. Jean is being redeemed. It doesn't matter that he failed to keep Henry in the Catholic Church. It doesn't matter. He's still going to heaven. Don't you forget it. And then this isn't like a confirmed thing, but one thing that I always found the most interesting about this painting is that Jean looks a lot like Henry VIII here. The kind of very stereotypical image that we have of Henry VIII was painted by this painter, Hans Holbein the Younger. It's a very similar pose, clothing. I think the pose is the big one. The kind of like hand on the hip, angular hat, the big shoulders. This is too, like, I just don't think there's no way this could be a coincidence at all. Maybe he's saying like, he's the more godly of them. By drawing the comparison, maybe he's going, look how much power I have, but my power comes from God. Like my power comes from my devotion to the Catholic Church. Something like that. I don't know if that makes sense. Or maybe it's just like him going, haha, like, I dress like you, like, fuck you kind of thing. What else can we talk about? This is called Sewing the Sail by Sorolla, and it's in the Accademia in Venice. This is also a big boy of a painting, 2 meters by 3 meters. I first encountered Sorolla in his standalone exhibition at the National Gallery. I must have gone to see that exhibition like 4 times. He was 1896. This was painted in 1896. If you think back to what we were talking about for the first painting, this is again around the same time that the Impressionists are kind of switching up the art world and really focusing on light. The exhibition was called Sorolla, the Master of Light. And I just think that is a perfect description of him because this guy was the goat of light. This is just such a beautiful painting. The way that the leaves glow and the way that like some of the fabric seems to kind of like have light shining through it. Like how bright the outside is, like in that door, but in the background, it's so like almost hazy. And it's also just very sweet. Like it's clearly like probably a family who fix sails for a living and they're smiling at each other and they're engaging with each other. Like that girl's smile in the middle is so lovely, and then the girl next to her is kind of smiling to themselves. Like you can tell they're probably like gossiping and sharing a laugh with each other as they do such a boring task. But cool, I'd be happy to sew some sails if this is where I was doing it in. Okay, what else can we talk about? Okay, one thing that's coming to mind. Again, guys, I'm going basic. I'm gonna talk about the Arena Chapel by Giotto. The Arena Chapel is this little chapel in Padua in the north of Italy. And Giotto, the early Renaissance artist, painted everything, the whole thing inside, wall to wall. This is mega famous, but it's famous for a reason. I've been there like 3 times. Almost every time I go in there, I'm like tearing up because it's just so beautiful. I think the reason why I get emotional in it is because it's quite a visually overwhelming space. Like you walk in and it's like relatively narrow and also not that big, right? So as soon as you step in, you're really getting a sense of everything around you. It's just one open space rather than like lots of little side chapels or anything. And also the walls curve around you. So there's this like continuity. There's no like wall ceiling. It does this and it's art all the way around. And then it's on the back wall and the front wall. Basically is a series of frescoes, and fresco is like this way of painting where you put wet plaster on a wall and you paint into the plaster so that when the plaster dries, it's like the paint is like dried onto the wall, if that makes sense. It's just like quite a durable way of painting. It was commissioned by this guy called Enrico Scriveni. Basically, Enrico's dad was a banker. Yeah, and he was a banker as well. But usury, charging people interest for a loan, is a big sin in the church, which basically means if you're a banker, and quite a prolific banker like him and his dad were, your reputation's not very good. And you think that you're gonna go to hell. So he commissioned this chapel as a way of basically saving his soul. And it's really funny, you can see a portrait of him at the altar where he's kneeling down in this like big purple robe and he's presenting the actual chapel to the Virgin Mary. He's going, take the chapel please, I don't want to go to hell. So that's kind of like background to why this was made. And what I think is so funny and a little bit like tongue-in-cheek by Giotto the painter is that on this same altarpiece there's a big image of hell, which is super cool and gruesome, and like one of the first depictions of the devil, like as we know him today, kind of. But there are loads of different people who have committed different sins getting like tortured in different ways. And one of them is usury. There's this like really funny contrast here of a guy literally trying to save his soul on one side, and then all the people who have committed the same sin in hell being tortured. So it's this like cyclical thing happening here. But the reason why Giotto, and this chapel in particular, is so famous is because people basically call him like one of the first Renaissance artists, in the sense that like his work marks like the beginning of a shift towards more realistic depictions. So one painting that I looked at quite a lot was the Lamentation, which is basically showing after Christ's been taken down from the cross. This is one of the first times that like emotion is at like the forefront of the image. So what I mean by that is, before this, people weren't shown with emotion on their face, especially not biblical figures, because they weren't supposed to be real people. They were supposed to be these celestial beings, so they're above emotion. Like, they don't show feelings because they're not like us, they're not real people. What Giotto's doing, instead of like creating this separation between us and them, he's like giving them this more human quality, which means that we're now empathetically relating to this. And I think it means that you're having a more emotional and real connection with the religion that you're engaging in. So for example here, like Mary, his mom, is literally like in so much agony. You can see it in her face because her son has died. I mean, it's really devastating. And there are people with their arms out and they're wailing in distress. There are angels in the sky that are like spinning around and clasping their hands together in agony. It's nice. I think he's super effective. Okay, I'm just gonna do one more because I've really been yapping. I mean, I guess that's the whole point of this series. Apple yaps at you for however long. This is called The Bridesmaid by John Everett Millay. And he's part of this group called the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. And Pre-Raphaelite means before Raphael. And Raphael was one of the big dogs in the Renaissance movement during the Renaissance, the Italian Renaissance. The Renaissance were looking back at classical art, like ancient Rome and ancient Greek, which were much more like static and stoic, idealized and perfect. And towards the late 1800s, people were getting frustrated by this like perfectionism that they had to have. And a big part of this shift, a lot of the art that they're looking at for inspiration is more like medieval art, which meant that they stopped painting all these like historical, big, grand, moralizing paintings, and instead they started painting things like medieval myths and stories, or even ancient Greek myths, and also painting more like genre paintings, meaning painting things from like real life, like everyday things. They're very romantic. And this one is super nice. It's called The Bridesmaid. It's in the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge. It's done by John Everett Millay, who is one of the founding guys in this movement. It's this little tiny painting of this lady who is putting wedding cake through a ring, I think 6 times, because there was this superstition that if you did that, then you would get a vision of your future husband. So it's quite like an intimate moment that's happening here. She's clearly alone. This isn't something you would do with people. She's in the moment of the vision. You can see how her eyes are kind of like above us. She's not looking directly at us. She's just looking into like nothing because she's having this vision. Her mouth is slightly parted, so maybe she's like taking a breath in, like, she's not thinking about what she's doing. She's in this like completely different world right now. There's a lot of symbolism. So like the orange at the bottom can be a symbol of like fertility and marriage, I think. There's a flower on her. I think it symbolizes innocence, I want to say. White cherry blossoms, and they're supposed to represent chastity and purity. But then the contrast is about this like pure thing that's going on is that there's also like kind of sexual undertones to this. A lot of people have compared that like silver object on the left to kind of a phallic symbol, which then can maybe link to the orange to do with fertility. So she's like, you know, she's thinking of her future husband, she's also thinking about her future kids. And then another big thing is the fact that she's got this big flowing ginger hair. Women in this period did not show their hair off. They were supposed to keep it super hidden away. It was like seen as very intimate to see a woman with her hair down, and only a woman's husband or like people that she lived with would have seen her hair down. So one, her hair down is kind of like just emphasizing the fact that she's on her own, like she would have just done this in her bedroom or something. But it also kind of connects to this like intimacy that's being linked with the whole kind of like phallic fertile vibe that's going on. And also gingerness was always associated with kind of like promiscuity and like naughty women. Not entirely sure why. We can look into that. Like Eve, as in Adam and Eve, she's shown as a ginger a lot. But the Pre-Raphaelites show women with ginger hair a lot. And I think that's them trying to maybe subvert that stereotype. Also, like I did look it up before, and I think a big reason why a lot of their paintings have ginger-haired women is because they all used to paint like the same model, and they loved her big flowing ginger hair. And so a lot of their paintings are based off of this one lady. But I think they just felt like it was, you know, if the whole point about their movement is to shift away from a more rigid, strict, perfect way of painting, then obviously if they're trying to do the opposite of that, they're going to paint women who are a bit more wild, untamed. But again, like this is one of those paintings that I really love because I just think it's super beautiful. You know, again, like if we're just looking at like harmonious color palettes, the like really rich deep blue of the background like perfectly contrasts the orange of her hair and creates this like visual harmony, which then links to like the orange at the bottom. And I also think like a very interesting subject, because a lot of the time people are painted kind of in control. They're doing something or they're thinking about something, whereas she is just completely lost in thought. And I think it's just, yeah, super interesting to see someone painted lost in such a kind of spiritual, magical moment. It's really cool. And actually like must have been very hard to capture. I think that's all I got for you today, guys. But that was quite fun. I got really into that. I think I liked doing that because it reminded me that I do actually really enjoy the subject that I'm studying. But yeah, please comment your favorite paintings down below. I'm really curious to see what everyone loves. Let me know anything you'd maybe like me to nerd out about. Let me know your thoughts on any of the paintings that I've spoken about. I really want to open up dialogue in these comment sections. Also, I'd love to hear feedback. This is a super new series and I'm very open to ways that you think I could improve it or like different ways I could structure it. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed and I had a lot of fun. So I'll see you in the next one. Can't wait. And thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I love you very much.